So we landed in Liverpool eventually, and the first thing we heard when we landed in Liverpool was a radio broadcast from Germany, and Lord Haha was the announcer at the time. He said, "I understand that a contingent of Canadian pilots landed in Liverpool today," and he said, "But we're not worried about them because," he says, "half of them will die in training accidents." He said, "The other half will buy a motorbike and kill themselves anyway." And this was a ho, ho, ho. This was our greeting. And we landed. We went down to Bournemouth, which was another sort of manning depot thing, and we waited for, at that point, they were just organizing this all Canadian wing 441, 442, and 443. And it was the first all Canadian wing in the war, and we were kind of honored. They had selected 3 squadron leaders who were either Malta veterans or desert veterans. These guys were good, all of them. One guy, I think it was Lloyd Chadburn, he actually was a wing commander, and he dropped down to a squadron leader in order to be a squadron leader of this in this wing, which was headed up by Wing Commander Johnny Johnson. You know, it was an all-Canadian outfit all the way, ground crew, and Johnny Johnson was the only RAF guy there, English. I can remember one day he took us on what he called a skeet shoot. Now, God, he was good with skeets, and I was doing pretty good with skeets, and even though I'd only been out once, and however, I can remember in combat, what you're supposed to do if the aircraft you're shooting at is turning, you're supposed to sort of lay off. That is, shoot not at the aircraft, but beyond the aircraft, and that way you're supposed to shoot them down. Well, that's what we were taught. However, I saw several guys go after, and these are veterans, go after enemy aircraft. And what they did is they just got so close to them that they couldn't miss. And so much. We learned so much about this business of laying off, and that isn't what they did at all. They just got close enough to them to just blast them out of the sky. And so I'm not sure that the training we got was necessarily the best. We looked at with a great deal of awe at those people who came up from the desert, from Malta, because these guys had spent at least a tour learning to be a fighter pilot. It took a tour to learn to be a fighter pilot, because we used to sort of follow these guys into action and just watch them and realize that they could spot aircraft much quicker than we could. They knew how far away from another aircraft they could be to shoot them down. They knew all of these things, and it was almost instinct with them, because a battle in the air is not sort of a fancy dogfight. It's just a one crack thing, and you break away because you never know who's going to shoot you, and at high speeds, and so I think, and I firmly believe, that it takes a tour before you become a fighter pilot. Now, the next tour, great. You are experienced. You know what to expect, and you know the skills, of the game. And so, frankly, I think that my my tour was simply a learning experience, and I learned a lot. And that sort of brings me to our conversion to Spitfires. The first time I ever took a Spitfire off, it was on a grassy field. On this grassy field, because I was a Hurricane pilot, what you did is you sort of forcefully lifted the tail of the aircraft off to get it after you get it moving, and I did that maybe more violently than I should have, and I tore big chunks of turf out of the grass field. The the air screw or the propeller, each blade was twisted back about 6 inches, and I got off the ground and did a circuit and landed, and that's when I found out what had happened on my takeoff, and that airplane never should have flown. Yeah, the bombing had pretty well stopped. We were still on readiness. We still had to, be ready to go and all the rest of it. But the actual bombing over England at that time had been pretty well taken care of. I can remember one night there were a couple of us that had gone into London, and we had to use the subway, the underground, and this was what 10 o'clock at night, and the underground, they were still running. However, when we went down, we found that people were actually living on the subway platform. They lived there to avoid this V2, and whole families. And it was difficult to sort of wend your way through to a train that was at the station. Well, there was no jealousy. No, I think that the fact that the airman was king in London, because he had done so much for London, and it was respected. So there would never be any disagreement, any argument with the Canadian air pilots. But the Americans had problems. We met an awful lot of Americans who were real nice guys. Which reminds me of a story that was told. We had a chap in our squadron, a young guy, and but Melnick liked to party. And one night, a flying fort landed at our base, and this is in the south of England. And the pilot of the flying fort, who was a lieutenant colonel, I think, and my fighter pilot friend Melnick got together, and over a few drinks, they had an argument as to just who could get off the ground quicker or earlier or whatever it was. And he got really loaded, and instead of going home after the party, he went out to the airfield, climbed into the nearest spit, started it, took off, and won the bet that he had made with this flying fort girl. And the argument was, who can get off the ground earliest? And sort of, Melnick got court-martialed for this, because it was really theft of an aircraft. But he made it. And I'm trying to explain that they were the crazy things, that happened. As you know, it's a round steel building. And as we walked in, we saw these footsteps that had been marked on the wall, up the wall, around, across the ceiling, and down the other side. And the Canadians looked at it and thought, my God, how did they do that? So what we tried to do was build a pyramid so that we would be underneath the wall at all times. And then someone would get black shoe polish and boots on there. Well, of course, we would get about 4 or 5 man high pyramid, and then it would collapse. And didn't work at all. An Englishman walked in, watched all this, smiled, and he went out and he got 2 broomsticks. He put a pair of shoes, one on each broomstick, and from the floor, he just did what we've been trying to do all night. And he was sober as a judge. But you know, things like